Welcome to All Eyes on Cleveland. My name is Brad Ward. Mikey is on the ones and twos. Blue Wire Hustle proudly presents our show tonight. We are thrilled to be back again. I hope you enjoyed the show last night with Mike Giannetti from Spot Trek, as we are doing our salary cap free agency week. We're hitting it from all angles, and tonight we have another very special guest on. Let's go ahead and get to him. His name, is Greg Tompsett, podcast host and capologist over at cover1.net. He's a busy man this time of year. How we doing tonight, Greg?
Doing well, Brad. Excited to be on. It's fun that all the years of playing Madden franchise mode are finally paying off to be able to have this idea. It's fun being able to build teams, and now as a Bills fan and someone who lives in Cleveland, it's fun that the offseason finally isn't the best part of being a Browns and a Bills fan. It's kind of fun that our teams are actually good now.
It's changed quite a bit, has it not? The pendulum has finally swung in the other direction, and it's not all about figuring out who the quarterback is this offseason for the Browns. So that's refreshing, quite refreshing, I must say. So we are in the middle of, free agency primer, kind of getting ready for everything. I've been trying to knock out players one at a time. The Browns have 17 free agents this offseason. Not all of them deserve attention, but, we're getting to it. I've been through the safety room, Higgins, a couple other guys as well. But tonight we're going to kind of do Browns free agency agenda with you. You put some work in here for us. I know you were normally working on the Bills, and I know you got some buddies we have some fellow acquaintances, and they were fired up to get you on some Browns topics. That's good stuff.
Yeah, man, it's kind of fun. So I grew up in Buffalo, but then I went to college at Baldwin-Wallace. So a lot of my adult friends and people that I've known since then are from here. I met my wife here in Cleveland. We then got married here and moved all around the country, and then recently, just last year, moved back here. So I'm living down in Olmsted Falls, right in the area here. And I will say, although the Bills are by far my number one passion of anything. I love the Bills more than anything I'm not related to. The Browns really are my second favorite team. It might be a distant second, but they really are my second favorite team. Watching games with my father-in-law, and my wife is still a huge Browns fan. My kids have Bills and Browns gear, so it's definitely a house divided.
That's awesome. Well, that's okay. That's too. I mean, you can't beat. So we're kind of the same way. We're kindred spirits as fans, right?
Very much so.
The Bills are not are doing okay, and they're not playing the Browns, then I'm all for it. You know what I mean? And it's I'm all about the Bills Mafia too. So very much kindred spirits as fans. All right, so we've got a lot going on in the NFL here, Greg. Let's get into some of this. J.J. Watt. Browns were in the Watt sweepstakes. He ends up going to the Cardinals, $31 million over 2 years, 23 guaranteed. What are your initial thoughts of his move here?
I was shocked at the amount of money. So, I think it's reasonable that a lot of fans were frustrated. In the comments that you say your number one criteria is to go to a Super Bowl contender, and then you sign with a team that didn't even make the playoffs. I have a feeling it was genuine. I have a feeling the comments that came out that he wanted to go to a Cleveland or a Green Bay or a Buffalo, I think that was real. I think those were the teams that were there. I think those teams were all offering $10, $12 million, and then all of a sudden the Cardinals came in and said, boom, $15.5 million, $23 million guaranteed. And all of a sudden he said, and then you add in that he can make a phone call to DeAndre Hopkins and kind of get some confirmation from it, talk himself into maybe this is an up-and-coming team and I can be the piece that puts him over the edge. I don't think he was outright lying. I think that they just blew him away with a number nobody else could compete with.
Yeah, I think a lot of the numbers that are getting thrown about right now maybe a little bit false. I know, a lot of the numbers reported that the Browns offered more and somebody else offered more, and I don't know if that's necessarily true. that maybe like because nobody's going to come out and dispute that. So that may be something from his camp where it makes it look like he's not all about the money, right? Or he doesn't want to look like that. So maybe
and the same thing from the Cardinals. The Cardinals
Yes.
want it leaked that they weren't the high bidder and that he picked them even though there was
Yes.
more money. His team and camp, and obviously you think about it, JJ Watt's the kind of guy that he cares very much about his public perception and the way
Yes.
that he's going about that. He wants it known that, oh, no, I didn't just follow the money. I took the lesser offer because I thought it was the right spot and whatever. I don't blame him for that. I don't think it's the end of the world. I believe reporters like Chris Mortensen and Ed Werder and Charles Robinson, who have all said that's not the case, not a random Arizona beat writer who said that there were higher offers. So I'm going to believe Charles Robinson that that's not the case.
Agreed. All right. So we spent some time last night, a lot of time, talking with Mike Ginnetti. You've been on. You just said you did a show with him the other night. Guy is great.
Oh, he's fantastic.
Fantastic, right? He knows everything, salary cap in and out, as I'm sure you do as well. You're a salary cap capologist into this stuff here. He's got $185 million over at Spot Track as the cap number right now. He talked a lot about it. It was interesting, the TV deals, and threw around names like Paramount getting in on the action, and obviously streaming getting in on the action on some of the bidding. So, and they're thinking almost maybe double the TV money coming in 2022. The kind of question is, will they be able to apply any of that money to this year's cap? Is it too late for that? It almost feels too late for that at this point, doesn't it?
So I will say none of that money is going to apply to this year. They're pretty direct revenue equations. It's the amount of money you just made. The way that it does apply is when they say they're talking about setting a floor, and at first they talked about 175 and now it's at 180, and now everybody's kind of guessing maybe 182, 183. Mike has it as high as 185. I've heard people talk about 188. It's in that ballpark. If you go through the standard revenue equations of, hey, 48% of the cap and the money goes to the NFLPA and X, Y, and Z, it's way lower than 175. They didn't make that much money. So the way we're already seeing that is they have confidence more money is coming because they know they're going to get double the revenues from most of the groups. And I think they got about 60% more from the ABC Disney group. And you're having other people bid like, Jeff Bezos and all the money from Amazon, or you saw those Paramount Plus commercials on the Super Bowl.
Yes.
That confidence is what drove the money up, even if it wasn't the direct equation of it. And it'll help offset that in the future for future years when it's coming, where they know, hey, maybe next year it was going to jump to $220 million. It will borrow $5 million of that and, make up for this year and make it $215. And they know it's getting back up into those bigger numbers going forward.
Yeah, so it kind of borrowing against themselves, right, to try to manage this. And you almost wish they would do it more because it is dangerous, right? Because if a team manages this properly and really plays, this free agency period the right way, there could be some crazy deals and a lot of cap room available for some teams at the right time if it jumps all the way up to that 220 figure, right? If it goes to 185 and then goes back up to 220, it's going to be wild. It's going to be the Wild West next year, right?
Well, you guys remember that year in the NBA where they let it go down and then it came shooting back. And, hey, how do you think Kevin Durant ended up on the Warriors?
With the Warriors,
How do you think Tyler Johnson and Alan Crabb and people like that got enormous contracts they didn't deserve, and Joakim Noah and all those different people who got insanely overpaid? It's because they let it blow up. So I would hope the NFL will learn from that. They're pretty greedy, so I don't know how much they're going to learn from it. But I think we're already seeing a little bit of that. The smoothing that you saw people asking the NBA to do back then, they've already done that. The revenue floor of 175, 180 is the smoothing that they wanted there. And I think it would actually be smarter if they kept it static at 198 again, because I think they have so much money coming in the future that they can afford to borrow from that. But even now, even if it ends up at 180, 182 or 185, it's still better than if they just did the math. I think the cap might be like 150, and you would have franchises. The Saints would literally go under and wouldn't be able to field the team. So I think this is better, even if I'd prefer they bumped it up another 15 million.
So, what's the direct effect in your opinion? So we saw Chase Edmonds put out a tweet like, and it's kind of ironic that it comes from the same team that J.J. Watt goes to eventually, but putting out the tweet like, 1 year deals is going to be the way it goes. Super teams or teams are really going to go for it. Do you think that's really how this is going to play out this year? I mean, I can understand certainly, and I'm sure a lot of people can, why guys would not want to negotiate a long-term deal this year, right?
Yeah, so I think you're going to see, I don't know where the cap is, the cutoff is. Your top 20, 25 guys are still going to get paid. Allen Robinson's still getting $20 million. Shaq Barrett's still getting $20 million. Taylor Moton, Brandon Scherf, all your studs and high-end guys, they're going to get the money. The difference is where it would have dropped off before, and now all of a sudden this guy would get $8 million and that guy would get $6 million. I don't know if that market exists this year. And I think that's where he's talking about. I think super team's a bit much, because super team would mean that you got Shaq Barrett for $2 million. Not that, you got, I'm trying to find a good example. Everson Griffin would have been able to get $6 million and now he signs for the veteran minimum. Like, that's a nice bonus, but that's not tilting a super team. I think that is what you're going to see, though, is guys who normally would have gotten the 3-year, $15 million deal. All right, listen, I'm going to take a 1-year, $2 million deal, but I'm going to try to find it in the right situation that's going to set me up perfectly to look good. So next year when the cap comes back up, I can cash in then. So, super team's a bit much for me, but you're probably kidding yourself if some of the higher end teams aren't going to benefit from it. Then if you have a high powered offense, you're probably going to get some guys who want to catch balls in that offense.
On the opposite end of the spectrum, Greg, does this season lend itself to teams tanking more than usual?
So the NFL is always the toughest one because of just the physical nature of the game. In the NBA, a guy dialing it back, you're not risking injury or getting hurt. In baseball, you can have a $20 million payroll against a $200 million payroll. In the NFL, with the salary floor, the salary cap, all the film that's out there of earning your next contract, it's tough. This does open it up as much as any team would, any scenario would, that if you're going to go through there, picking this year to eat a whole bunch of dead cap and then all of a sudden be like, oh man, the cap's really low, we couldn't sign anybody, sorry guys, and crying poor to the fans. There's as much ammo for a ownership group to do that as any other time. And I'm sure, I don't have the Trevor Lawrence of next year. I'm sure there is some guy who's the hot commodity quarterback for next year. Somebody will have an eye on that guy and be ready to pack it in ahead of time. Interesting.
The Chiefs, and I talked about this last night too, are an interesting subject point at this because they have the most guys guaranteed money, but they constructed everything with these roster bonuses, right? So, and it leaves themselves some flexibility, and I don't think a lot of people understand it, and they're kind of like, what? I just put my podcast arm in today, and I'm not used to it yet here. So
mine's hidden right here. It's just hidden right below the screen.
Getting my bearings straight here with this thing, but yeah. So the Chiefs have these roster bonuses that they can convert to signing bonuses, which then get spread out over the lifetime of the deal. And a lot of people don't get that. They're like, how are they coming up with this money? But the crazy thing is, say they do that and they're I think they're 17 and a half below or in the negative as of right now. And if they were to do Mahomes' roster bonus, they would be square, right? Well, they got Chris Jones has a $20 million roster bonus. Travis Kelce has $7.5 million roster bonus. If they want to, they can create all kinds of cap room and then go for it again, even with the guys that they already have on the roster. When does it come back to bite them? When does it get them, Greg?
So the way I describe it, people throw out there all the time that the salary cap is a myth, and that's not the right way to describe it. the salary cap is like that friend in college who always had a cool car and a nice apartment and picked up the tab when you went out to the bar. It's because he was using a credit card. And those bills come due eventually. And you can also get a good job to pay off that debt, or you can roll it over into a, the low interest loan, or you can spread it out over into another credit card. But eventually you have to pay it. And I think some people want there to be repercussions in the sense of, oh, well, if I don't see that guy living on the street selling his body for crack, then there were not repercussions. Like, it doesn't mean the franchise has to fold. It just means you couldn't extend your rookie that you drafted. Now you had to let him walk, or you weren't able to keep, the edge rusher that you wanted, and you had to let him walk and to go into free agency. So it's just that you can kick the can down the road for a while. And then a lot of teams are going to learn the hard way. The Saints this year, the Steelers this year, some of those different pieces. It's that they didn't plan on this being $35 million lower than what it was. So now all of a sudden, it's not that they're going to fold as a franchise, but they're going to lose an awful lot of talent, and they're going to eat up anything they have in the future. So some of those things, roster bonuses, option bonuses, signing bonuses, a roster bonus is set to be paid all within the 1 year's salary cap. You can convert a roster bonus into an option bonus or a signing bonus, which prorates it over the remaining years of your contract. So what teams like the Chiefs do, and the Rams do it with their inflated salary numbers. So they put everything into the base salary, because if you need it, you can go to that and convert it into a bonus, pay them out the money right then, spread it out. But if you can afford to eat it, you eat all of it that you can, and then move on to the next year. So they set themselves up to give options, and smart teams do that. And finally, the Bills and the Browns have enough good players that we want to pay and extend and actually sign beyond their rookie contracts. And now we're going to learn that part of the financial flexibility, when we'd always get frustrated, like, come on, man, how can they extend that guy and sign that guy? I thought they didn't have any money left. We're now going to be the teams that are finally doing that, and other people can get mad at me like, well, that doesn't make any sense. How did they keep OBJ, and they didn't cut Richardson, and they didn't cut Njoku, and they signed JJ Watt? How the heck did that happen? Now we get to have fans be mad at us. It's going to be great.
Yeah. Oh, that I would love that problem. Let's bring that problem on. All right, you're listening to All Eyes on Cleveland tonight. My name is Brad Ward. Special guest Greg Tompsett, and he is over at Cover One. He is a capologist, and is the name of the podcast just Cover One as well, Greg?
Yeah, we have a whole
Cover One podcast.
Network. I do the Bills-centric one, so Cover One Buffalo. We have a Cover One Draft podcast. We have a couple other ones with film breakdown. So there are some things from Cover One Draft you guys would enjoy that's not Bills-focused and focused on just overall prospects coming out here, but a whole umbrella of guys that we have with different shows, and I lead the Cover One Buffalo podcast.
Yeah, you're a popular guy. I typed you into YouTube and to find my video, to kind of edit or whatever, and there's all kinds of you everywhere. Look, all kinds of Bills videos. I had to scroll down 3 pages. So
no, we have a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun.
You're a popular guy, yeah. So that's good stuff and good content as well. So let's get to the Browns a little bit here and look at what they want to do. So for me, and I know you did some work on the Browns, obviously, knowing you're coming on the show as your a little peer pressure from your friends, I'm sure. But for me, job one, Greg, is edge, right? And it's, if the Super Bowl taught us anything, it's that if you're going to compete with Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson in the AFC, right, you're going to have to get home with 4 guys. And that's just what I came away feeling, and I'm sure a lot of people came away feeling the same way. Myles Garrett is a great piece. Sheldon Richardson will be there, I think. I don't know. People keep talking about restructure. I don't really see it. I don't think they'll do it. I don't think he'll be open to doing it, particularly. But we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong on that. But I feel like they have to find the long-term solution opposite Myles Garrett, and they need to supplement that. What are your thoughts on options on how to do that, the best way the Browns can do that this offseason?
So it's going to be interesting because the Browns have one of the best sales pitches you can give any pass rusher, which is, hey, do you want to be opposite Myles Garrett?
Exactly.
There's just not that many options where you have that. And I think, honestly, that's why a guy like J.J. Watt was interested. So I think you can look into that as two different paths. I think one is, okay, if it wasn't J.J. Watt, is it going to be another veteran guy, maybe on his level, like a Von Miller, if his option isn't picked up in Denver, maybe at a slightly lower level at a Justin Houston or a Ryan Kerrigan, but that is a rotational guy that maybe you draft a guy and put them together. Another option where the Browns are in a position, and obviously, we might get into it later with some of the upcoming contracts for Denzel Ward. Myles Garrett's money hasn't kicked in yet. Baker Mayfield's money. They have to be conscious of those things. But the Browns are in a position that if they want to jump into the end of the pool with Melvin Ingram, Shaq Barrett, Yannick Ngakoue, Matt Judon, Leonard Floyd, I think they could play in that end of it. My guess is that they're going to kind of find a middle ground. I think that there's a couple really intriguing names. Carl Lawson, obviously you guys are familiar with him from the Bengals. Trey Hendrickson, Romeo Okwara. I think those guys are going to be in like the $10 million range. They're not going to completely break the bank and require, I think Shaq Barrett's going to get $20 million. I think that somebody will overpay Jadeveon Clowney. So I think that you'll have those guys. If you can get a Trey Hendrickson, a Carl Lawson, a Romeo Okwara, one of those kind of guys around $10 million, I think they would flourish opposite Myles Garrett. And they're young enough where you could bring them aboard and get 3 to 4 years of their contract. Those guys are 25, 26, and 24, the three that I referenced. I think that that's a chance to really be able to build something up and come along with, obviously I think Myles Garrett's the most talented pass rusher in the NFL. I'm a huge Bruce Smith fan, and he's a mentor of his.
Yes.
And I think that, he is just a once-in-a-generation athlete. And if you can put somebody opposite him who can take advantage of any of that, you saw the year Olivier Vernon had, and unfortunately for his injury, otherwise I think he might be somebody in play to be able to come back. My guess is you guys go into that middle ground where you're not breaking the bank, but somebody maybe better than Justin Houston or Ryan Kerrigan, who would be purely a 40% snap rotational guy.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's perfect spot for them. But I also, and I'm going to throw this on top of you, I think that's right, that range. I think that Hendrickson is a very good candidate, and I think that I think Carl Lawson might get franchise tagged. I have a guy that I know that works on the Bengals, James Rapine, and he mentioned that to me, that he thought he might get tagged. That'd be unfortunate because I like him a ton.
Yeah, one valuable guy off the market, it would be.
Yes. Yeah, so, but the one thing about free agency this year is it's super deep in almost every position. So, and that's going to affect the market as well. So you have this lower cap and you have really deep positions with good players. And I think that'll bring down prices as well. But yeah, $8 to $10 million, good type of guy, I think, would be ideal for the Browns, that can come in and do the job. But I also would like to see them take pick 26 and get their guy they like best there at end. I want to do both. So I want the long-term solution and a rotational piece, or a guy that you can put on inside of it and you can kind of switch it up there. They're getting Andrew Billings back off of an opt-out. Yeah, on a short deal. He totally fits that front better than Ogunjobi does, who I think they're going to just let walk, okay? It seems like. And then, that they have him coming in, and they have some depth with Elliott from last year. And other than that, they might need to add a little bit of depth, but in the middle. But on the edge, I think that if you address it with two pieces, draft, and I'm really high on two guys, Ojulari from Georgia and Osai from Texas. I like them both a ton. If either one of those guys were there at 26, I would want them. What do you think about that?
And I think you can do some interesting combinations. I'll use Trey Hendrickson as an example. I think he has maybe a little bit of J.J. Watt to him where, say you did draft one of those two guys, they're probably not ready to come in and play 60, 70% of snaps right off. So get a guy who can be that power and play strong side defensive end on rundowns, but then can kick in to a 3-tech and a penetration style inside on passing downs. You bring the rookie in, and then all of a sudden you're talking about having a line across the front where, good luck blocking Myles Garrett, Sheldon Richardson, Trey Hendrickson, and, whatever rookie you draft at 26. That's something really terrifying. And I think a lot of people have brought it up. I looked at it. The contract for Sheldon Richardson isn't ideal, $13 million at 31 years old. But I actually think there's a pretty good opportunity instead of cutting him, which cutting him would create $12 million in cap space. I think if you guys were tighter up against it, you might do that. But with $25 million in cap space, it's not pressing to do that. I actually would love to see him just give him an extra year, but give him an extra year at a more palatable number to say, hey, Sheldon, if we cut you right now, you're not getting $13 million on the open market. But how about we give you 2 years at $18 million? We'll go down to $9 million a year. You give us back $4, $5, $6 million of that this year. Give us a little bit of space. You get an extra year. We think 2 years, $18 million is about as good as you would do on the market anyways. It's a win-win. You stay with this team. I think you guys are in a position now where before maybe you had to overpay a little bit to get a guy to stay. I think now with the culture that's being built, Barry and Stefanski building that kind of environment where players want to come play, and that you see top-end guys like J.J. Watt considering Cleveland, I think a guy like Richardson will be more open to that than maybe 5 years ago. Maybe he would have said, just cut me, I'll go sign somewhere else. I think guys are going to want to stay now and might be willing to do a more team-friendly structure.
That's a really impressive take on that, and a really good idea, I think, Greg. I mean, I hadn't looked at it that way. I was kind of thinking of a more traditional restructure, but adding the extra year and appealing to what he would make on the open market. Once again, the only wrench in that is, hey, what if the cap shoots up to $30 million? Is that going to be enough, right, to make him stay home? But I totally agree that he's a big part of the culture. Sheldon Richardson is a big part of what they've done and a big part of the culture. And losing Ogunjobi will hurt that some. He's just not good enough to keep around, and I think somebody's going to overpay him, in my opinion, on the open market. And it just doesn't make sense for I don't think the Browns to hang on to him, but it certainly does, I think, make sense to figure something out with Sheldon, or else you're really starting from scratch up there. I mean, you'd be with Billings and not much else there to work with. But I think that's a great idea and something that we hadn't talked about yet. So good stuff there, Greg. If we move on from edge, right, and kind of whole defensive line we covered there, let's take a look at the secondary. And I've done a couple pieces on the secondary, and the Browns secondary has some question marks. There's certainly some talent there. You have Denzel Ward. You've got Greedy Williams, who did not play a down last year, but a very talented kid you took in the second round. We'll talk a little bit about him. I think that Kevin Johnson, who was your next guy, your nickel guy or slot corner, he will be a free agent. I think they let him walk for sure. And then you've got a guy like Terrence Money Mitchell, and he has been great for the Browns because he's been available. Greedy's been hurt. When Denzel's been hurt, he's played at a good enough level to be out there and hang with guys and do his job on a weekly basis. I mean, he's always available and he's always game. He's going to be a free agent. I would like to see them hang on to him if they possibly could somehow come to a team-friendly deal with him. But really, other than that, you can't bank on. So let's talk about just corners for now. You can't bank on Greedy Williams because you don't know. You just don't know. So, crazy, you get these crazy, out there stories, right? Okay, Greg? So, supposedly, somebody was, Jedrick Wills was playing video games with some, on Twitch or something with a bunch of people and made the comment in the room while he was live streaming that Greedy can't feel his left arm or whatever at all, like has no feeling in it. Take it for what it's worth. A bunch of people have repeated that rumor since then, so I don't know. He was claiming at the end of the season that he was ready to play. Obviously, they weren't going to bring him back at that point, but so who knows? I don't know what to believe. I don't know if he's going to be ready and how much this sets him back at the same time. Thoughts on the corner room and what can the Browns do there?
So, obviously in today's NFL, coverage is critical. Teams are passing more than ever. The Browns are in a great situation with a game-changing pass rusher. Obviously, looking to add to that will make it easier for the coverage in the back end. But you still need more than just Denzel Ward. I'm a big fan of Ward. I think he's a really strong corner. Obviously, would love to see him play 16 games. But he's obviously a talent. I know I've seen the rumor floated out there. You have Glenville grad, Marshawn Lattimore, Ohio, Buckeye, Ohio State grad. I love the story of bringing him back, but the Saints are going to want a premium draft pick to be able to trade away a guy still on his rookie contract. I do think someone would offer them a first-round pick. Cornerbacks are valued that much. So whether it's this year, next year, whether it's a second plus some, let's say they did that, he's also going to want the same huge deal that Denzel Ward's going to want. Yes. So whether that's, Trey White at $17 million or Jalen Ramsey at $21 million, it's in that ballpark. Paying two guys $18 million a year at cornerback is really tough to be sustainable in today's NFL. So my guess is, that also probably eliminates a couple of the really high-end free agents as well. But there's actually a pretty nice road in between there. So a good middle ground would be, hey, we'd like to bring Terrence Mitchell back on a reasonable deal. We have some hope for Greedy Williams, but we'd love to bring in Xavier Rhodes for $7 million. We'd love to bring in A.J. Boye for $5 or $6 million. At worst, you have good depth in the secondary, which is never a bad thing. And if, God forbid, something is wrong long-term with Greedy Williams, you have a veteran in the room who's ready to contribute. And I will say, if there's anything that I think the Browns could lean into a little bit more, you want to be careful not to go so far on the youth end of the spectrum that you don't have some of those warriors in there who have been in the trenches before and been in the battles, can help when after a tough loss that they weren't expecting, can help kind of talk to the guys and bring them back. I think having a veteran in each room that can help guide some of those guys is maybe a next step for the franchise. Yeah. And I think that would make sense. AJ Boye is the kind of guy there. Maybe Patrick Peterson doesn't get the market that he's looking for out there. I don't think he's ready to be an isolated island guy anymore. But if you're talking about opposite Denzel Ward, paired up in a platoon with a young guy like Greedy Williams, I think he still has something to offer there. Maybe one of those kind of guys would make sense here, where you can do it on a value but still have more depth of what you need. There's a younger guy that I really like leaving San Francisco, Akello Witherspoon, guy that's like 6'2", 6'3", ran a 4.4 and had a 40-inch vertical. I think he's a sneaky guy that somebody's going to get and be a target to go after as well. So I think there's plenty of names out in the market, and I wouldn't be shocked, if Mitchell leaves, maybe the Browns could take a stab at two of them or a draft pick plus a guy coming in, because I agree. I don't think you can put all your eggs in the basket of Greedy Williams.
Yeah. So my thought was, one way that I did a video on this, Greg, and one way the Browns can immediately get better is with that slot corner position. So you paid $3.5 million to Kevin Johnson, former first-round pick, just hasn't panned out. He wasn't very good this year. They were hoping to get the Buffalo edition of Kevin Johnson. He had a good year there,
yeah, it was nice.
Somewhat, and they didn't get that version of him, right? So he's gonna walk. Now you spent $3.5 million on him. Now the top end, high end slot corner guys in the NFL are going to go for $6 or $7 million. So one way you can really get better, I think, and not spend a lot of money is go get a Mike Hilton or a Troy Hill or a Brian Poole at that slot corner and
Big
only
fan of Brian Poole.
Yeah, and only spend a couple more $1 million, and now you've really improved that room a ton, because I mean, how important is that position in today's NFL? It's huge, right? They're going to be on the field 70% of the time.
It's a starting spot. Heck, some teams are 90% of the time.
Yes, exactly. And so I just think that to me, that's a no-brainer, and one place that you can go get a top-end guy, and it'll only cost you a couple $1 million, and you'll get a lot better than you were last year.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, and I think that you obviously probably the next position we'll go to will benefit if you have guys who can be more of the quarterback back there, coordinating that coverage and being able to add it up if you add another athlete there. So I think adding a guy, maybe even Desmond King, you saw him get traded.
Yep.
I think he's going to be available.
Yep.
He's an interesting name in the nickel as well.
Yeah, for sure. The only guy that I think would be a little more of a pricey out of that group is Troy Hill. Might be like $7 million, maybe push $8 million, because he can play outside too. Obviously, he did that before Jalen Ramsey showed up. So let's look at the back end of the secondary. Okay, safety was pretty abysmal for the Browns this year. Delpit gets hurt in training camp. For the record, I wanted to take Antoine Winfield Jr., by the way. But they took Delpit, and still really high on Delpit. But torn Achilles, out for the season, in training camp. So now Andrew Sendejo, who was brought over to play backup, behind him.
Probably some special teams.
Took 999 snaps at safety, which is ridiculous, right? And then they traded a 5th-round pick for Ronnie Harrison, who worked out. He looked terrific. Finished the year as the 9th rated safety over at PFF. So that was a great move by them mid-season. But then they had Carl Joseph, another guy for another former first rounder, coming off his rookie deal. Carl Joseph is a lot of guys, people in Cleveland are getting on because I'm being Carl Joseph. But Carl Joseph made a lot of plays and can play the run really well, and he's a big hitter, so a lot of people like him, but he can't cover, and he can't guard a door, and I just want to pound my hand on the table and say he cannot cover. I know he's a good tackler, I know he's aggressive, I know he's made some plays in that stretch run against Pittsburgh, the 2 wins in a row at the end of the season, and he had a big role there, but he can't cover, and you have to have safeties that can cover. Now, Joe Woods wants to play with 3 safeties on the field a lot of the time. So my opinion, and I think that's the way a lot of the NFL is going to go. I love your and your Twitter thing, big nickel enthusiast. I love.
It's the way of the NFL.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. So that's fantastic, by the way. But yeah, so I think. A lot of people disagree with me. I think they should go after a high-end safety because I don't know that you can depend on Delpit. And B, if he is healthy, you still need a third guy that's really good. And I don't think that third guy is on the roster.
No, I think you're spot on. I think if you're going to splurge, it's also a reasonable area that splurging at safety is less expensive than splurging on the offensive line or at corner or at pass rusher. You can get a little bit better value. So I don't hate the idea of bringing back Carl Joseph. I don't think you can bring it back where Carl Joseph is your best safety. I think that he's fine playing off of another guy. If for some reason that the Broncos let Justin Simmons walk and they don't do a second franchise tag. And a second franchise tag is expensive. You're talking about 120% of what he got paid last year. I'd throw all the money at Justin Simmons. I think you guys could pay him 4 years, $60 million, and have it be worth it. Anthony Harris coming out of Minnesota, obviously the relationship with Stefanski. I don't think they're going to franchise tag him. I think he is going to be available. He's more of that really high-end center fielder that I think could play, and I think that Delpit is more of what you guys saw in Joseph. I don't think he's going to be out there. I think he's going to be coming up, coming forward, really dangerous, blitzing off the corner. Not Tyrann Mathieu level, but more you can use him in the slot. He can make plays. He can blitz off the edge. I don't think you're putting him back there to play center field for the Bills. Micah Hyde. I don't think he's that kind of guy. I think that you want to bring that kind of guy in. John Johnson is an interesting guy coming out of LA.
John Johnson, yeah.
I think he's a guy that, if you could get him for $8 million a year, I think that's a really interesting number. And then 2 guys that I like, you talk about wanting to play three safeties, and where the big nickel comes in is that you want a guy that you don't really know, are you in base defense and that's a third linebacker, or is that a third safety, or can you cover? And two guys that I love in that realm are Keanu Neal coming out of Atlanta and Jaquiski Tart coming out of San Francisco. Those two guys, I think, are the perfect hybrid players where you don't really know, are they in base defense or are they dropping back in coverage? Is it nickel? Is it, heck, even dime? If you sign a nickel cornerback, but you have that guy out there, okay, is that nickel because they're another linebacker? Is it dime because it's the third safety and three corners? That's what modern NFL coverage is going to be, where all these crazy athletic tight ends going out there, you want a guy that, hey, we're not sacrificing the run. We want a guy that can come up there, but there's no more Brandon Spikes out there, 270-pound run thumper linebackers. Those guys don't exist anymore. Heck, they're nose tackles now. That's just not what exists in today's NFL. So having a guy that's that hybrid role, I actually don't think it's crazy to bring in two guys. I could see the Browns splurging. And say it's even John Johnson, he's young, he's athletic, he's going to get a longer term deal, but not crazy. Say it's 5 years and $40 million at $8 million a year. I think Keanu Neal or Jaquiski Tart are going to be in a spot that they're going to try to set themselves up for next year. Maybe you bring one of them on a 1 year, $5 million, 1 year, $6 million deal. All of a sudden, Delpit comes back. You're in a much better position. You have those options if you went in the draft for nickel, or you weren't able to bring in a high-end linebacker or something like that. You have more options in the secondary. I think that I'd even consider bringing in two guys, or if it's a Harris or a Johnson, maybe you could bring back Carl Joseph, and then Joseph, Anthony Harris, and Delpit are your three safeties. Something along those lines. You don't want somebody like Sendejo playing 1,000 snaps.
No, you don't. So I'm going to tell you this, two things here is really funny. But first of all, it's funny and sad at the same time, but Joseph, Sendejo, and Sheldrick Redwine took 2,000 snaps at safety. And between the three of them, none of them had a coverage grade at PFF over 49.1, which is really sad. And so, it's very rough. And then in Sendejo, it was just hard to watch him play 1,000 snaps.
He's a fine
there.
Backup. He's a guy that you want as your fourth safety, playing special teams. And if a guy gets dinged up and you need him for a game, that's fine. He's not a guy you want depending on is playing the most snaps on your defense.
No, and the Browns, Joe Woods brings that Seattle cover 3 over, which they play a lot in, and a lot of that is that it's kind of football's version of matchup man-to-man, right, kind of, and he just is so reactionary and never anticipatory, and it's such a struggle to watch him sometimes. Plays develop right in front of him, and you're like, find some work, right? Like, find some work, all right? But I wrote an article on exactly the topic that you just said, and, some people disagreed with me, but I literally said I think they should sign 2 guys in free agency, and I listed 4 guys, 2 high guys and 2 value guys, and I don't know if you saw that or not, but the 2 guys I listed as the top guys were Marcus Williams and John Johnson III from the Rams, and then my 2 value guys were Keanu Neal and Jaquiski Tart.
Jaquiski Tart might have the best name in football.
He might.
It's
yes,
fantastic.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's great. I love saying it, and it feels good to say. And he played with Woods in San Francisco and already knows the scheme. And I'm a big fan of his game. I think he's terrific. So that's interesting that you said those 2 guys, because those are the same 2 guys I wrote up in my article. So
that's why I think you have excellent taste. Excellent taste.
Yes, so do you, sir. Very, very well done. So that's kind of the look there at safety. I even went as far to say that they would even draft a guy in the later rounds as well. I said that Sheldrick Redwine, who I am not a fan of at all, should be your 5th, if not 6th, safety going into training camp. He shouldn't be taking a ton of snaps this year. So
yeah, the only guy that should be banked on is Ronnie Harrison. He's a good player. He's somebody you're confident to have back there. I think if Delpit's back healthy, that's a bonus. But I think you got to be careful banking on anything like that and coming back. You want to be able to have multiple options there. And again, with today's modern NFL, there's no downside of having secondary depth.
Absolutely. All right. All eyes on Cleveland tonight. We're doing the free agent agenda for the Cleveland Browns with a very special guest, Greg Tompsett over at cover1.net. Check out his podcast work, all of his work over there that he does for the Bills and the Bills Mafia tonight, lending his knowledge to the Browns here on All Eyes on Cleveland, and we appreciate that greatly. This has been terrific so far. All right, so let's move to a little bit more of a Browns really want to handle this. So they have this analytics-driven, Deep Podesta front office, and the linebacker has gone the way of the running back on offense to a lot of guys that are numbers guys, right? So the Browns don't value the position, I don't think, very much at all at linebacker. They've drafted guys there that are young and can run, but they haven't really invested much there. They let Joe Schobert walk, and it's hurt them. I mean, they have guys that can play the run, and they have guys that can sort of cover, but they don't have anybody that can do both, really. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's what they need, especially if they're going to continue to run the amount of zone that they did last year. So today Mary Kay Cabot comes out with the report after Watt signs, and do you know who Mary Kay Cabot is?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Mary Kay Cabot says two that are linked to the Browns, she reports, Levante David and Rashad Perriman. Well, we'll get to Perriman in a minute, but Levante David. And I kind of thought, I don't know if they would ever invest that much money in that position, but I wouldn't be mad at it if they did. Thoughts on linebacker?
So it's tough because I think Levante David's fantastic. I think he's going to get $15 million a year. I think that's tough. I wouldn't be shocked. I've actually had plenty of Browns fans ask me about Matt Milano, that if the Bills, the Bills are in a rougher salary cap position than the Browns are. They're actually like $1 million over the cap right now, and don't have a ton of obvious moves to be able to get under. There's some tougher ones. So it's very likely that they're going to lose Matt Milano. I think he's going to get 12 or 13 million.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would predict that that's the market the Browns are in. I do think they need an upgrade. I don't think you can go into next year. I know Sean Taki had his moments. Maybe Mac Wilson comes back. I don't know that there's an obvious for sure answer anywhere there. Is Malcolm Smith still going to play? I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. I think it's more in that middle range. You look at maybe KJ Wright coming out of Seattle. I think he's going to be more in the $6 or $7 million range. I like Devondre Campbell. He's a guy who was pretty good in Atlanta, went to Arizona on a 1-year deal. I think you could get him for $5 or $6 million. Honestly, it's not crazy to maybe bring Christian Kirksey back. You see some of those guys go and come back. I think he's a value guy, and the way that they're looking at this, unless they go and want, an every down absolute answer, it's going to cost you with the Levante David or Matt Milano range.
For sure.
There's a sneaky guy that I like coming out of Las Vegas. Nicholas Morrow is a guy who's phenomenal in coverage. He's a guy you would pair with a Mac Wilson, with a guy who's going to be more of the downhill guy on when you're having 3 linebacker sets. But when you want a guy out there in dime and pure coverage, I think Morrow could be a guy you could get for cheap, or even an Alex Anzalone out of New Orleans. I think you're probably going to lean more that direction. If there's one guy in the middle along with KJ Wright, maybe Jayon Brown coming out of Tennessee. I like him a lot. I'm nervous he's going to get Milano, Levante David money. If he doesn't, he's like Carl Lawson for me. I joke. People say all the time, "Oh, I love it." They probably see Mike's projection on Spot Track, like, oh, I'd love him at $8 million. I'm like, if every single person has him as their number one value, he's not going to be a value. Somebody's going to overpay him. Everybody loves Jayon Brown as their value linebacker, which probably means he's not going to be a value. So if you can steal him for $7 or $8 million, he might be your answer as an every down guy. I have a feeling he gets 10, 11, 12 million, and then heck, you might as well sign Levante David.
Yeah. I find it hard to. I would love it if they signed Levante David because I do think it would make a difference, and I wish they did value the position more. I'll be honest, you know what I mean. So I think that the best guy they have they have a bunch of young guys, Taki, Mac Wilson, and then they had some veterans too. I wouldn't mind them to see him bring back B.J. Goodson because he did a pretty good job for them, and he's a leader. And Malcolm Smith even played pretty well in coverage. I don't know if he comes back, though. I think the one young guy that I kind of think could be a good player is Jacob Phillips from LSU. The guy can really young, super fast. Was dinged up a lot his rookie year. But I think he could even overtake, like, Mac Wilson and maybe be, like, their young, speedy linebacker. But the guy, I wouldn't be surprised if they just go draft again. I don't know if they'll address it at all in free agency, Greg, and I know that sounds crazy, but it wouldn't shock me if they went like second round or third. They have 2 3s and 2 4s, or try to address it that way.
I'd be a little surprised with the first round, but I mean that you're not in a terrible range. That's the area where does Zaven Collins fall? Do you have somebody like Jerome Akwaru, the guy from Notre Dame,
Owosu?
There we go.
Yeah.
I mixing him with Romeo Okwara. I don't know that Micah Parsons is the answer of what you guys are looking for, but there's a handful of guys that are in that range because obviously the Bills are in the same thing. The Bills are, if we lose Milano, are we going to go linebacker at pick 30? So I'm looking at a lot of those same guys. I don't think that's normally the answer. Rookie linebackers don't normally come out and are fantastic right off the bat. But again, with the amount of interchangeable parts that the Browns have, maybe that's a pairing. Maybe you end up with a guy, say Devondre Campbell, I think is a pretty good veteran, but you can get him at like $5 million and then one of those extra third round picks, and then you mix that in with Goodson and Mac Wilson and Taki, and that's your linebacker group, and the investments are more in the secondary and the pass rush, which, from an analytic standpoint, that's where that's going to lean.
That's what it says in Deep Podesta's guardrails. That's
what the spreadsheet says. You got to listen to the spreadsheet.
You got to follow the spreadsheet. No, I don't know. I mean, I hope Mary Kay's right. I do, or at least they address it with, like you said. They should at least address it with somebody better than who they have been addressing it with in free agency, and then maybe throw a third rounder at it as well. Now you got a bunch of young guys there, athletic guys, and maybe you brought a veteran in. The only reason I wouldn't want to bring Kirksey back is he was cursed when he was here. He was hurt all the time, and I can't go down that road again. Very talented guy, just very injured all the time. But yeah, so. It looks like, let's see here. I've been neglecting the chats. Brian, our guy Brian Peterson here, when we were talking about the NBA bloated contracts, Jakeem Noah deserved every penny he got, he says. So that's pretty funny.
I take that personally.
Yes. So that was funny. I wanted to post that real quick. All right, so... the other name Mary Kay mentioned, and this one, another guy I really like in the draft, Jabril Cox, and another LSU guy, but a guy that played over 100 snaps in the slot. If we're talking about big nickel enthusiasts, hybrid guys, whatever you want to call them, Viper. Everybody's got a different name for the hybrid safety linebacker guy. So I like him there, a guy that can cover there a lot. So
your man in the chat, Logan, brought up Richie Grant. I think Grant is a guy that could be doing that.
Okay.
You talk about Hamza Nasruddin out of Florida State. is a guy that, nobody really knows. Is he going to be a linebacker or a safety? I think he's really in that, flexible range. I love Jabril Cox. I think that he's a great fit. Some of the other guys that I think even could be there, you talk about another guy besides Cox in the LSU area is Jacoby Stevens. He's a guy that's going to be converting from safety to linebacker, but is in that kind of that hybrid mode. I think those are going to be some of this year's Jeremy Chin or Kyle Duggar, the guy in this year's draft that people are going to be after for that flexible mode. And I think that's a perfect fit. If the Browns don't go down the path of Keanu Neal or Jaquiski Tartt, I think that a guy like Nasruddin would be a perfect fit in the second round. I think he's going to be right there in that like 40 to 60 pick range. If he were to fall to the Browns pick there in the second round, I think that could be worthwhile.
And that's the thing, and you just kind of made the point to me, and those are great names. But by improving that safety room, like twofold, with a guy like Tartt or a guy like Neal, who's like a box safety, and they can come up, you're really improving the linebacker room as well, 100%. Right? Okay.
That third safety, the 11th defender in today's NFL, you want to be as ambiguous and positionless as possible. So whether that's you call him a safety, you call him a linebacker, you call him a slot, that guy's on the field an awful lot nowadays. And I even want two of them. I'm fine if there's one linebacker and then two ambiguous guys that you're not sure what position they play. I want more and more of that. And, obviously, I don't take this the wrong way because Browns can rub Wyatt Teller in my face, but Jordan Poyer is that guy in today's NFL. Yes. Jordan Poyer has been a godsend for the Bills, and he's kind of part linebacker, part safety. He was 10th in the NFL in tackles, but he can also drop back deep, and you can disguise coverages, and he's not the same as Micah Hyde, but he can play well enough in coverage that you don't know whether he's coming or not. More guys like that. I want multiple of those kind of guys. You don't know what they're doing. They can be anywhere on the field, and the more flexibility you have to do that, the better off you'll be.
Yeah, versatility is key for these defensive coordinators for sure moving forward, I think. All right, so let's transition here, and once again, your eyes on Cleveland. We'll get through one more segment here with Greg Tompsett of Cover1.net. So gracious with his time tonight and his knowledge. He's been exceptional, and I think it's in for a pretty good show here, so I hope you're enjoying it out there. Make sure you hit the subscribe button at the bottom right now if you are watching live, and hit the little bell next to it so you make sure you know when quality content is coming to you. All right, Mary Kay Cabot, once again, back Rashad Perriman, former Brown. Browns lack speed in the receiver room. Greg, they do. And so this is a whole conversation, right? Rashard Higgins is a free agent. And he and Baker Mayfield have a magical connection. And Higgins was the Browns' best receiver probably in the last 6 games of the season last year. He's played terrifically last year. He's been through his ups and downs. He took a team-friendly deal to stay in Cleveland last year. He's just beloved in Cleveland, right? Everybody loves him. I love him. I want him to stay.
I would welcome him in Buffalo.
Yeah, he's great, and he makes big plays, and Baker always finds him, and he's just perfect. OBJ goes out week 6. Baker takes off. Stark contrast of numbers without OBJ. People are say, "Oh, you're crazy to say they're better without OBJ." I don't think it's that simple. There's layers to this, okay, in my opinion. I think that there is a real effect that OBJ has on Baker Mayfield. Now, the front office wants us to tell us at the end of the season that the offense progressed after OBJ left, and that's why Baker got better. And I'll buy that to a certain extent. But if OBJ was there, would he have been taking off with the offense is the question. Or did Baker grow up enough to go back now, add OBJ in, and now it does work altogether? very tough questions, right?
Sure. From afar, I'll say I think there was development coming in the first year in Stefanski's offense, the transitions that were taking place, that regardless, the Browns' offense was going to be better week 9 to 16 than they were week 1 through 8, regardless of who else was out there. Now, is there a little bit of gravity with a guy like Odell Beckham Jr. that's just tilting the field a little bit his way, including the attention of the quarterback and the attention of the defense? I think that it goes both ways. Sure. I think that it's naive to think, hey, does the ball get distributed more in Buffalo if Stephon Diggs is out? Yes. Do I think the offense is better without Stephon Diggs? No. But does it get distributed more evenly and you don't know who it's going to? Sure. But I will tell you, even when the defense knew who it was going to, Stephon Diggs still got open. I think that it's hard for me to believe that the offense is better without Odell Beckham Jr. Now, can you reappropriate his resources if you were to get a solid trade return and to free up $16 million off the cap, and you tell me you want to spend that differently and can come out with a better product? I can listen to that. I think the offense was going to get better last year anyways, and that it just got better, and that I think you would have been even better and an even bigger threat in the playoffs with Odell Beckham Jr. But I think that he also showed that there could be answers without him if you do go down that path.
Yeah, I mean, that's the ultimate question, right? Well, if he was there, would they have even been better? And if that's reality, then I want to see him stick around, right? Now, the thing about the $16 million you mentioned is because of his injury, 12 of that is now guaranteed. So he's got to...
If released. If you trade him, it's zero dead cap, and you get all of the money off of your salary cap. So that there's no scenario where you're going to walk away in a release because, one, you're not going to release. He's still talented. There's no sense that doesn't make any sense. If you trade him, it's zero dead cap and $15.7 million directly off the cap. So the only scenario where he'd move on would be in a trade, or you could restructure and kick some money down the road. You guys don't really need to do that. But yeah, the injury guarantee protects him via injury for release. But if he's traded, his whole contract goes with.
Okay. I was under the impression that the 12 and some change was dead cap money on the Browns regardless at this point.
It's guaranteed, but it doesn't get paid out until the game checks. So if you trade him, the new team takes it on and they pay it out. Now, they can't release him either, but you're not trading for Odell Beckham Jr. to release him, that kind of thing. So there is a chance if a team offered the right deal, you could move him. And, honestly, a team that has a bunch of cap space, but maybe bids for Allen Robinson, or all of a sudden Robinson gets franchise tagged, and all of a sudden Chris Godwin gets franchise tagged, and Kenny Galladay gets franchise tagged, and a team that was going to go big game hunting like the Colts or the Jaguars or the Jets, all of a sudden don't have anybody to spend that money on that they bookmarked. Maybe they want to give up, a second round pick and a day 2 pick next year, and it frees up $15.7 million. Again, personally, I think he opens up the passing game, and you want to add to him with a speed element. But I can see a path where it's worth it to bring on younger assets and use that money elsewhere.
Yeah, I think it's a total toss-up, as I was going to say, is if somebody came and offered a 2, right, for him right now, I would really have to look hard at it, because if you deal him, then you can bring back Higgins, and then maybe you can bring back a totally different speed element, and instead of just having Odell Beckham Jr., you have Higgins and a speed element, and maybe that's better. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's hard to say, and this front office kind of makes me think that at times they might go the value route there, like a guy that I would love for them to go after, and I don't know what his market's going to really be at, but if they did deal Beckham, I want him to go get Curtis Samuel. Like, I think he would be ideal, right? Like, ideal for this offense. The speed sweeps, the speed, that he would bring. And then bring back Higgins, and I think that they're grooving, right? Like, I think that would be ideal. But at the same time, it's Odell Beckham Jr., and he's going to work hard. I don't worry about his injury. He's going to rehab it totally, and he's going to be a stud again. So as long as Mayfield has really taken those steps and come along where it's not going to be him staring down Beckham on his, or staring down his first read while Beckham's running wide open, or staring down Beckham, who is his first read, then I'm okay. Which he got over and looked much better down the stretch.
I would say that would be my consolation for Browns fans is look at the silver lining of the injury. It will be much harder for OBJ to come back and to expect a ball-dominant offense focused on him because they saw the way that it opened up. You also had Baker Mayfield get valuable reps, learning how to go through multiple reads and going to the right spot, and now hopefully inserting a guy like Odell Beckham Jr. back into that. You're now adding the phenomenal route runner and tough catch, the catch radius that he brings. You're adding that back in. If you were to go down that path, I don't think a guy like Samuel or Corey Davis is another guy that I like who's young and athletic. I think they would be more replacements if you traded them. I do think there's a sneaky area that you could have some of these veterans who might get cut loose be interested in joining an offense like Cleveland's, where maybe Brashad Perriman, but maybe you get a cheap run at a Deshaun Jackson, or the best one I think is all the names we've rattled off here tonight. And you talked about Curtis Samuel, you talked about Chris Godwin, you talked about Allen Robinson and Kenny Golladay. I think it might be tough for a guy like T.Y. Hilton to get the market that he thinks he's going to get, and all of a sudden it's April 2nd and he still hasn't signed with anybody yet, and now all of a sudden it's maybe I could be the speed element to take the top off an offense like Cleveland, and I'll take 1 year and $6 million to try to make a good season and then go cash in 2022. I don't think it's out of the question that you guys could steal a guy like a T.Y. Hilton, and if you now don't have him have to be leaned on as a number one option in an offense and you let him be the real release valve to take the top off, I think you could have some exciting combinations with a guy like that in that offense.
And come full circle now back to that salary cap there with the 2022 balloon up there. So for what we started with, and we came full circle on that with T.Y. Hilton. Now, the thing about the wide receiver position, the last thing I'll say, and you can comment on this as well, is there are, for the second year in a row, it's a super, super deep wide receiver draft. There are speed guys all over the draft, and the free agency class is super deep. There are guys everywhere. So that's gonna depress the market a little bit itself, as well as the lower cap. So it's very possible. We didn't even talk about
Will Fuller and Tyrell Williams and Marvin Jones and Keelan Cole and like some other really talented guys that are out there. I think it's going to be very interesting to see where some of these guys end up.
There's wide receivers everywhere. There is, and they're out there. So that's the good news. And I think Perriman does. I see the link she made. He did play here. Mayfield had a good connection with him for the half a season that he was here, right? And he does take the top off, and I like him as a player. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I mean, if you keep OBJ, I guess that would be the kind of guy that you would want to add, right? Somebody like that. That makes some sense. All right, so stretch run here, Greg, and Greg, you've been fantastic, and thank you for your patience. Greg Tompsett at cover1.net. Go check him out and check out all of his work. But let's go down the extension list here, and I want to get your thoughts on this stuff, okay? Baker Mayfield, this year or wait?
So I think that the potential for Baker Mayfield to take another significant step forward is pretty likely in my mind. So The risk is, obviously, you just saw Jared Goff and Carson Wentz, that you had to go eat those contracts because they extended too early. I think the amount of discount you could get that, hey, maybe you can still get him around some Garoppolo Wentz money rather than some Deshaun Watson money might be worth it. You're talking if it's $7, $8, $9 million a year that you can still get him in the lower 30s rather than the upper 30s. That could really pay off down the road. And it's not without risk. There's a chance that he turns into a pumpkin and all of a sudden you regret it. I think it's pretty low. I'm a big fan of Baker Mayfield. I think your baseline and your floor is that he's good. Maybe he doesn't have that superstar gear in him that he's going to jump into the top 5, but having a good quarterback in today's NFL is really nice. Like, that's a very pleasant surprise after the last 20 years our franchises have experienced. If it was me, I would extend him now and get the benefit of that. If they just exercise the 5th-year option and work on it next year, there's nothing wrong with that. I think that they can be very confident in it. And honestly, if your worst-case scenario is, oh my gosh, Baker Mayfield took a leap forward and had an MVP-type season, and now we got to figure out how to pay him $40 million, God bless you, because that's a wonderful problem to have. So I think you're in great shape either way. I think Baker Mayfield's going to be in Cleveland for a decade plus, and I think he's a fun guy to rally around, and figuring out how much you need to pay him is the least of the problems in Cleveland.
Well, that's good to hear you say that. I feel the same way. I feel like in this offense, I have just such faith in Stefanski's offense and Baker starting to get it. I just don't see him taking a step back, and the only thing it's going to do is cost you extra money. So if that's the case and you really feel that way, at least that's how I feel, if they feel that way, then get it done now, because even if you just save $3 to $5 million a year, that's a player every season for the next 5 years, right? So that's a big deal. I agree with you there. Nick Chubb, running back. There's a million running back extension horror stories. Now, the running back market has come back down to earth since the Gurley days. Dalvin Cook signed a pretty reasonable deal, right, last year. I think around 12 a year or something like that. So Nick Chubb is special, in my opinion. He's a special guy, too. Now, they do have Kareem Hunt under contract as well, which can either be part of the pitch or you can go the other way with it. What do you do with Nick Chubb? He wasn't a first round pick, so this is the offseason you want to do it if you're going to do it.
So I feel bad for Nick Chubb because I think he is special. I think he is a phenomenal talent. Sadly, I think Andrew Berry and the leadership in Cleveland, Paul DePodesta, and everyone that's there are going to realize a loophole that exists in today's NFL. All the franchise tag numbers that get thrown around, and it's like, $15 million for a linebacker. The Bills can't keep Matt Milano because you got to franchise tag him at $15 million. And hey, we don't want to franchise a tackle. Darrell Williams is a free agent for the Bills. He's a right tackle, but the franchise tackle number is like $15 million. The franchise tag number for running back is $8 million.
Yeah.
Do you know that doing it 2 years in a row is 120%? Guess what 120% of $8 million is? It's $9.6 million. And guess what? If you do it a third year in a row with the exclusive franchise tag with 140% of that, it's $13.4 million. If you did all 3 of those years and then you added that up as if it was an extension, it's a 3-year, $31 million deal. There's no incentive whatsoever to extend him for big money. Deal. You can keep him where your absolute worst case scenario is 3 years and $31 million, and you get him for 3 more years. I feel bad. I think his agent deserves to want Christian McCaffrey money and to want Dalvin Cook money and to want Derrick Henry money. I have no idea why any franchise would do it, because honestly, if you tell me there's 4 years of Nick Chubb's rookie contract and then 3 more years after that, 7 years is probably all you're going to get, and then you move on. And you want to know what? $31 million is a ton of money. Good for him. Get your $31 million. I will be absolutely flabbergasted if a Paul DePodesta and Andrew Berry analytics-heavy, analytics-driven franchise pays a huge contract extension to a running back. I will be blown away. I will be absolutely blown away. Now, for Browns fans who are fans of a talent like Nick Chubb, like I said, I don't think that means he walks out the door. I think you handle it year by year. You give him the franchise tag, and you give him the $8 million. And then if he leaves again, you give him $9.6 million more, and you keep letting him, unfortunately run until the wheels fall off, and then you let him go. And with the two-headed attack with Kareem Hunt and him, that can run for a while. And honestly, whenever that's not ready, you spend another second-round pick on another stud that's coming out. And sadly, that's just the world we live in. And I like him a lot. I think he's a great talent. I hope he spends this year and 3 more years in Cleveland. I don't expect it to be a Derrick Henry, Delvin Cook deal. I just don't.
Yeah. And I think, did Tennessee do one franchise tag?
Yes.
I think they did, and then they did the deal. So, yeah, I mean,
and Derrick Henry's an alien. Maybe if you're going to bank on one guy not breaking down, I'd want him to look like that. But it's still, there's too many Gurley and Zeke and all those other contracts that just scared the crap out of me. That Le'Veon Bell held out, and now he couldn't even catch on and got cut midway through the season. And it's just there are way too many horror stories for me to want to sign up, because all those guys were the right answer in the moment. The Rams don't get to the Super Bowl without Todd Gurley. Ezekiel Elliott and all the all that stuff, like, that's real. He was phenomenal. Everybody was celebrating when he's doing those things. Le'Veon Bell was the best all-around threat, offensive threat in football in his big season, and then they fall off a cliff. And sadly, so will Nick Chubb at some point.
Yeah. I think that, Mike said the same thing last night. He said, franchise tag, probably. Yeah.
But Mike and I go to the same school.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Why pay him $12 million a year if ultimately you're never even going to have to pay him that on average, as you said, and that is a bit of a loophole. So that's interesting. It's something to think about. In 7 years of a back in his prime like that, that's tough to beat. Great point there, Greg, and appreciate that insight. The next guy I'm going to bring up 4 guys tonight. So we'll bring up Denzel Ward next, and he's a first-round draft pick, so he has that 5th-year option. Where you want to wait on him? You want to get him signed up? How do you feel about him?
So I don't believe every single day that goes by, he's a little bit more expensive. Cornerbacks in the NFL are never going to get cheaper. They're only going to get more expensive. And the more guys who want their record-breaking deal, whether that's Marshawn Lattimore or whether, every other guy that's coming out, Xavier Howard, that wants all that money, it's just going to keep pushing that market up. And, you saw the Bills benefited from jumping ahead of that. Tre'Davious White was the highest paid cornerback in NFL history for 6 days. Yeah. And, they got him at $17 million, and now guys are asking for $20 million. And now it's going to look like a discount. And we paid him the highest cornerback in NFL history, and then it got beat very quickly. If you guys can snag Denzel Ward, and I get it, you'd love to see 16 games every season. I know he's not the biggest, thickest guy in the world. When he's on the field, he is an elite cover corner. You cannot replace him. I get it. If you want to wait and hold out, I can point you to an awful lot of defenses who would love the chance to throw money at Denzel Ward. I would extend him the day that I could.
Interesting. That's the one problem I have with that, Greg, is I want to see him play not even 16 games. I want to see him play 14 games a year before I pay him, his $80 or $100 million deal, right? I want to see him do that, and he hasn't done that. It's just, he's a little fragile, and he's a concussion or two away of being in danger, I think. I don't know. I mean, he had 2 his rookie year, right?
Yeah.
That's tough. He hasn't had any since then, and at times like you said, when he's on the field, he's spectacular. He's locked down, and he changes the game, and they're a much, much better team. I mean, him and Garrett at times on the field together, 2 players just carried the defense, right? Like, I mean, at times, and that's really hard to do in football. And so I agree with you there. There's no question about his talent and about what he can do for the Browns. Just maybe want to see him play 14 games, and that's my only issue. But
I will warn
I get
you,
your point. Yeah.
The Browns aren't picking in the top 4 for a long time.
Oh, you're right.
Unfortunately, when you have the chance to retain those elite talents,
you probably should do it.
The Denzel Wards of the world don't get to pick 26. They just don't. And that's a wonderful reality of our franchises now, that, being in that, at worst, in the playoff hunt every year, picking in the back half of the first round means that there's no more Myles Garretts and there's no more Denzel Wards coming. You have to find other ways, and having a chance to retain the ones you have. I certainly think, you look at the other markets there are no top-end cornerbacks coming out in the market. Jalen Ramsey isn't going to be out there. Marlon Humphrey's not going to be out there. Byron Jones isn't going to be out there. If you want to wait, you exercise the 5th-year option. You hold it out. You push him that you want to see that. But the alternative is, if there's any leverage that DePodesta and Barry have that you can try to push, that you get a little bit of a discount. And I know Marlon Humphrey got $19.5 million a year. Jalen Ramsey got $20 million a year. Marshawn Lattimore wants $20 million a year. If you can get Ward for a notch below there, closer to 17 or 18, because if he plays all 16 games, he's getting $20 million. He is.
Yeah.
Like, if he plays all 16 games, he's getting $20 million. So if you have a chance to get a little bit of discount off of there, it might be worth it to do it now. Because if you roll the dice, and again, that's just like our conversation with Baker Mayfield. If the worst case scenario is Denzel Ward played an awesome season and you have to pay him $20 million, it's an awesome problem to have. But it might be worth it to try to lock it up ahead of time.
No question. Yeah. Great points. You can look at it both ways, and probably the way that you framed it, you probably swayed me here tonight on Denzel. I was saying wait. I think you changed my mind. You pushed me over the edge with you're not going to be picking 4th anytime soon, and you're right, And even if he only plays 12 or 13 games, that's 12 or 13 games of a guy that's really hard to come by in the NFL, right? So,
yeah, absolutely.
So interesting stuff, and Greg, fantastic job. Last guy, and you're gonna hate answering questions about this guy, Wyatt Teller.
Yeah.
Best graded offensive lineman in all of football this year. He was incredible. He was amazing. I don't know what happened. Maybe just the relationship with Callahan. I don't know, but he became something very special for the Browns this year. And rated the best guard in all of football by PFF, but he was dinged up here and there, and he has a year left, right? So they have him for a year, but I got to start thinking about his extension right now too. And then that offensive line starts over, because that offensive line is the key to everything for me. That offensive line is loaded. Yeah. So thoughts on that?
So obviously now you're getting to the point where at first I don't think anybody was sure, was this real? Like, at first it was a 4 to 6 game stretch where it's phenomenal. Like, oh my gosh, did we hit on something here? You come into this year now, and again, it was only 11 games. You'd love to see 16. He confirmed that this is real. And that's really the spot that it was in when Wyatt Teller got traded. He was a late round pick, and the Browns gave up a 5th and a 6th for him when he hadn't really played. And it was on that potential. And the Bills were in that same spot where they were wondering, hey, he really just hasn't been able to put it together. He hasn't been able to get the technique. And, God bless Callahan. He's such a good position coach to be able to help a guy who had that raw power to really harness it. He's been a just a gold mine for the Browns to be able to have that. And now getting to that point that I agree. I think that when you talk about the benefits of Baker Mayfield and his fit in the Stefanski offense, it's because of he needs to play off the run game. He needs play action. He needs some protection. And that's no shame. Every quarterback needs protection. I don't think that you can be chintzy about that. Now, the challenge is there's a lot of linemen being paid here. So in all honesty, giving Wyatt Teller that money means you probably have to let a Bitonio walk and then draft his replacement. So there's going to be some difficult choices there that I don't think you can pay. Matter of fact, I don't think you can. You can't have 5 highly paid offensive linemen across the board. You can't have a $60 million offensive line. It's just not feasible. So if he gets paid, and he deserves to get paid, and it's going to be, I don't know if it's 15 million, but if he has another season of highest graded player in PFF, it's going to be close to $15 million you're going to need to pay him. It's going to be whatever Brandon Scherf gets this year in Washington. It's going to be that kind of contract. That probably means you have to move on from one of the other guys. And with the amount of depth and talent that the Browns have built, I think Conklin's there. I'm a huge fan of Will's. Being able to put that kind of deal there together, whether it's needing a replacement and letting Tretter's deal expire, letting Bitonio's deal expire, you're going to need to draft the replacement for one of those guys, have one of them on a rookie deal. But if you're putting a guy like Teller next to him, you could probably have a center do pretty well if you have a monster like Teller next to him.
Yeah. It's hard to think about any of those guys leaving. It's like I want to keep those guys. I just want to keep them there forever, but I know it's not realistic. But yeah, it's John Dorsey. Who would have thought? He gets Teller in that deal, and then he works out to be what he was this year. Yeah,
like I said, that's why I didn't feel about rubbing Jordan Poyer.
No,
Poyer. Yeah, you guys made out much better with the Wyatt Teller end of the deal.
I still root for Poyer. Every time I watch the Bills, I'm like, man, how did he become such a good player? Because he played a lot of downs for the Browns in a lot of games that were blowouts and did not matter. But he turned himself into a hell of a player. Yeah.
So many Bills fans are frustrated. Oh my gosh, how did they lose Teller? And I try to tell them, listen, we didn't have Callahan, so I don't know that he would have developed into the player that he was here.
Yeah.
I said, but nobody was saying this when he got traded. None of us. Yeah. Everyone was celebrating. Oh my gosh, how did Bean get 2 draft picks for a guy who was a 7th round pick, and you got a 5th and a 6th, and he never even played the field, and we were going to cut him. Nobody was celebrating that. In the Browns, obviously, the Browns didn't know that's what nobody knew this is what he was going to turn into. No. It's fantastic that he has. And I tell Bills fans all the time, you should be rooting for him. He was a great guy. He's a ton of fun. He's a bunch of energy on the field. I love watching pancake blocks and him going out and finding work. He's an enjoyable guy, and Cleveland deserves every bit of it.
He proposed to his girlfriend on the field. Did you see that this year?
It's phenomenal.
Oh yeah. So he's our guy now. He's Cleveland through and through now.
Oh yeah. He's a perfect fit for the culture. He's a perfect Cleveland fit.
Yeah. This has been outstanding. You were tremendous interview. Unbelievable. I do want to ask you about one more thing. I want to ask you about Ben Roethlisberger. Yeah. So Kevin Colbert basically came out and said, I don't know, right? I mean, he was pretty frank about it when he came out. He was like, he wants to play. We'll see. I don't know what we're going to do. But then the ownership speaks out, and they said it's his job, It's a $41 million cap hit. And they're going to figure something out with that, right? I don't think he gives a crap about any of that. But I'm like, please bring him back. I want, he's beat us like 17 straight years. We finally beat him. I want 2 more shots on him on his way out the door,
So I will say, I do think he was playing hurt at the end of the year. So I think that there's a chance that he's better than what we saw in 2020. There's no chance we're going back to what he was before. He's just not that guy anymore. He got the ball out faster than any quarterback in the NFL because he had no interest in getting hit by anybody.
That offense was ridiculous.
Oh, it was the weirdest offense ever.
Oh, my
but
gosh.
whatever. I'm not terribly nervous about Pittsburgh, but I will say, they had some nasty injury luck and everything like that went into how bad the end of their season spiraled. So I think that they're probably not the 11-0 team that they look like they were, but I think some people are throwing dirt on the grave a little bit soon. They're still going to be competitive next year. They're in trouble with Roethlisberger. He has all the leverage in this situation. If he retires, they're screwed. They still have if he retires, it's still a $22 million cap hit. They need him to do and this is probably Browns fans' best case scenario. They need him to do a restructuring that keeps him here for 2 more years and spreads out that cap hit, because there's no chance that he's not giving money back. He's not taking a pay cut because he doesn't have to. So your best case scenario for Browns fans is that you keep him for both years of his deal. He spreads out some of that cap hit, gives them a relief probably by some of those. You hear teams talk about those voidable years.
Yep.
That they add on some voidable years and spread it out to another couple years, and that you keep him here for 2 years. I don't know if he's got 2 years in him, but he's playing this next year because that's way too much money for him to walk away from. And I think that's a fun idea to have Myles Garrett and, maybe a guy like Carl Lawson or Trey Hendrickson opposite him, sandwiching him. And maybe the Steelers get to be, or the Browns get to watch him, play his last snap as an NFL quarterback being sandwiched by Trey Hendrickson and Myles Garrett.
I don't know if it can get any better than him crying on the sidelines after the playoff game. I mean, that is
pretty phenomenal.
Epic stuff.
People were lighting off fireworks in my neighborhood after that game. It was pretty amazing.
I mean, Teddy actually went over there and cried like tears. It was like a dream come true. And then what about Brees? What's he doing? What's this guy doing? I see an Instagram photo of him running way too hard for a guy that's supposed to be retiring. What's going on there? And then ownership. I mean, they can't kick him out, right? They can't kick him out the door. So they tell him if he wants to play, it's his job. And I think they said that with the full understanding that they thought he was going to retire. I think he's waffling now a little bit, or is there news today? I see you typing away there.
I was double checking just to make sure. I do think he's retiring. I mean, he played through some nasty stuff, whatever, the 8 broken ribs or whatever the heck it was. His contract's a little bit more palatable to what they've already stretched out. So he doesn't have a ton of leverage to be able to do much of anything. And honestly, I think he's just one of those hyper competitive guys. He was a phenomenal tennis player and a nationally ranked tennis player growing up. I think he's going to be one of those guys who's always working out and doing that kind of stuff. So I don't think that he's going through it, but I will say I would guess that he, in the back of his mind, wants to walk away saying, you want to know what? I probably could give it another go, but I'm happy. I'm ready to move on in life, versus being like, well, I went and got fat and happy, and now I can't really do much about it, so I guess I got to retire anyways. I expect and anticipate him having a retirement ceremony here soon. I think he is done, although I think he probably has about as much left in the tank as Roethlisberger does. But Roethlisberger just has a lot more leverage than what Brees did from a contract standpoint. So I'll be pretty genuinely surprised if he doesn't retire, but I will say I don't think it's 100%. I think it's 99%. I don't think it's 100% that he retires.
I think they're just so mad that Brady is still so good, and they're just like,
I believe me, I'm mad about that too. I understand.
Great job, man.
Appreciate
you were
it.
fantastic guest. I had an absolute blast, and you killed it, man. Knocked it out of the park. Best Browns analysis in a while.
No, that means a lot. Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Including the host. So,
No, thank you, man. This is a ton of fun. Looking forward to it. I hope plenty of my neighbors and friends are listening, so I hope you guys enjoy it. Try to put in the work to be able to help you guys. And honestly, I'm really excited. I can't wait for Browns-Bills games that matter, that are, stuff on the line, and that both our teams are good, in the playoffs, chance to go to the Super Bowl, that kind of stuff. That's what I'm looking forward to. And I think the next decade, we're going to see some Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen rivalry games. I think it's going to be the real deal.
Me too, brother. And I look forward to those days. I look forward to having you back on the show again.
Anytime.
All right, man. You're awesome, and you killed it tonight. Thank you so much, Greg Tompsett. Go check him out at Cover One, at Greg Tompsett on Twitter. Make sure you follow him there. Have a good evening.
Thanks, guys.
That was fantastic. That was awesome. Greg was amazing. So I hope you all enjoyed that interview. Go check out his stuff at cover1.net. He hosts a podcast over there, Capologist. And a gentleman and a scholar killed it tonight here on All Eyes on Cleveland. So thank him so much for his time. We are running way long tonight, but he was worth it, every minute of it. Great interview, and I know you guys will enjoy that out there. So tell a friend, All Eyes on Cleveland. Tell your friends to come listen to the show. Hit the subscribe button on your way out. I do want to mention on my way out here, March 10th, that's next Wednesday, 8 p.m., on the Browns Discord, which you can find. I'll post it on my timeline, but Browns Discord, if you're not already a part of it, go check it out. Lots of Browns talk, news, anything you want there. But they're doing their first ever AMA Ask Me Anything session, and they've asked me to do it. So I will be doing it on Wednesday night, 8 p.m., March 10th. So join us then. Ask Me Anything on Browns Discord. And with that, another shout out and thanks to Greg Tompsett for a fantastic performance here on All Eyes on Cleveland. Please hit subscribe button on your way out. Tell your friends. Tell your parents, cousins, uncles, pets. Tell them all. All Eyes on Cleveland. Hit the subscribe button. Mikey on the ones and twos tonight, doing a fantastic job. And with that, we are out.